The inaugural episode of Podfreak is dedicated in loving memory to Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and the many before them that have suffered injustice due to the pigment of their skin. Black Lives Matter. Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Podfreak. We have got a pretty good show lined up for you today. We have got some potential news that we're going to talk about with the Metroid series. I'm going to review Animal Crossing New Horizons because since I started my show a little bit after when that game actually released, I feel like it's as topical as it is going to get. In the middle of that, we're going to have a question from my wife. I'm still waiting for names to a lot of these segments. I haven't named it yet, but this week's question does deal with the upcoming Wonder Woman movie. And then at the end of that, we are going to have who would win of sorts between Luke Skywalker in his prime and Shazam. So stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. I don't know why I'm saying stick around as if we're going to have like an ad break or something, because we're not. We're going to start right here, right now with the news of the week. So I haven't seen this a ton in the news. I feel like potentially because of the amount of salt you have to take this rumor with given the past. But I have seen it, and that news is that Metroid Prime Trilogy is going to be coming to Switch, and not only is it going to be coming to Switch, it is going to be coming to Switch next month, which would be a very strange release window, given the fact that I believe Paper Mario and the Origami King comes out very shortly after that. But that's what the rumor goes. I'll just read it for you straight off of Games Radar. It says, according to a new listing on Swedish retailer iNet, which is still alive and online at the time of writing, the game will finally release in less than a month's time and contain Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, and Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. The prospect of a Metroid Prime trilogy has been hanging around ever since Metroid Prime 4 was announced, significantly delayed, la-da-da-da-da. You get the idea. This Swedish retailer posted a listing for it, said it had a release date on it, and then they subsequently took it down. But my understanding is this same retailer is the one who caused all of these rumors to circulate in the past. I think that same article talks about how in December of 2018 they said it was going to be released in February 2019, and that never happened. But if this is actually happening, and when and if it does happen, is kind of the old saying of where there's smoke, there's fire. So you'd have to think that it's going to happen at some point. Whenever that does happen, I would be completely down for trying it. I've never played through a Metroid game. As a matter of fact, because of this rumor, I'm actually trying to play through Super Metroid for the first time. But the Prime Trilogy specifically has always been something that I thought would be cool to try, and something that I feel like I could be into. It's Nintendo, which I love. I'm not really into first person too much, but I like the idea of, running through the levels. I like that idea of third person, the story driven games. And I know they've been really well received. Didn't have a GameCube, could have gotten them on a Wii, but I wasn't interested back then, and my Wii is gone. That's a dark story for another day. But I don't have the Wii anymore. Putting it on the Switch in even just an HD upgrade would be fantastic. I have a long list of games that I want to play on Switch. My thought process when I got the Switch was, hey, I'll play through them at my pace, and then even if I don't play through them as they release, I'll eventually play through all the games that I want to, and I'll have tons of gaming for years to come. Trying to get into that mindset of not having to play everything as it's new just because it's new as I get older and have more financial obligations. But Metroid Prime Trilogy would definitely be on that list, as will Metroid Prime 4 when it eventually releases. And I feel like Metroid Prime Trilogy would be a really good way for me to try the series out before 4 comes on. So I say, please, if there's any credence to this rumor, Nintendo, and you're able to make it happen, get that Trilogy released, because there are people like me who would like to try it for the first time, and I feel like the Switch has taken a lot of IPs to new heights, and I feel like having the Trilogy for Prime would only help that for when Prime 4 comes around. You already got me hooked on Animal Crossing for the first time after I've previously not been able to get into it, which we're going to talk about later in the episode. So do it with the Metroid Prime Trilogy. I really hope this rumor is true, because I would definitely try them out. And that is that. I believe we are moving on to the review itself of Animal Crossing New Horizons. So when it comes to reviewing these games, I wanted to create a system in how I was going to be reviewing them. The same for the movies and the TV shows, but I'm probably going to develop a system that might have different categories, but the same concept. But I wanted to create a system that I thought would make it very easy for me to give a gut reaction that was pretty accurate, in the sense that it was just black and white, like I like it or I don't. So that way there doesn't have to be nuance, and there doesn't have to be like, well, I guess I'll give this a half a point or whatever the thing be like that. But I also wanted to grade it on different categories. So that way you would know it's not biased, like, oh, I just love this game so much, so I'm going to give it this score because it's just my favorite, while still ignoring its flaws, because maybe something I care about more is something that someone else might care about less. But I also felt there are certain elements of games that are just by default more important. So I came up with a system where I'm going to give each category a ranking between 1 and 5. 1 is I hate it, 2 is I dislike it, 3 is I'm neutral, 4 is I like it, and 5 is I love it. That way I can just have a very guttural reaction like, yes, I like that, or yes, I love that, or no, I hate that entirely. And then I'll give one of those scores to each of the 4 categories. The 4 categories are gameplay, replay value, story, and graphics. And each of them is going to be worth a different percentage of how much it's worth. Gameplay is going to be 45% of the score, story is going to be 25% of the score, replay value is 20%, and graphics is 10%. And I'm going to upscale these scores to be out of 100, so it's easy to calculate. So a 1 would be actually worth 20 points. But then I'm going to scale it back and to be in a score out of 5. So that's a lot of information. I'm sure that I'm never going to explain it in that detail again. And I'm also sure that over time I will develop a quick way to just kind of bounce that off at the beginning of each review. But that's the concept. And the first time I kind of wanted to flesh out my entire justification for it. So that's how we're going to go with Animal Crossing New Horizons. I am going to, so I'm going to do 2 of these before. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to do 2 of these after. So I haven't decided if I want to do gameplay value or story or replay value or graphics first. I guess I'll just go in the order they're listed here, which is actually in descending order of importance. It's probably not the best way to do it, but that's how we're going to do it this first week. I'll come up with a better, what I think is the best natural flow later on. But Animal Crossing New Horizons. So my initial thoughts are, where do I start with this? So in the past, I have never been able to get into Animal Crossing. Those of you who know me may know that I really, really love games with repetitive tasks that some may say would be monotonous, with a big reward in the long term for continuing to play. There's just something therapeutic about it to me. That's why I love Minecraft. That's why I love games like Stardew Valley. That's why I love games like Harvest Moon to a lesser extent. And even though it's an RPG and it's not really like a simulator like these other games, it's even why I like Pokemon to an extent when it comes to breeding the eggs, looking for a shiny, doing things like that. I can find tasks like that to be therapeutic, and the reward is awesome. And I really like to see how over time my commitment to the game can turn into something I can be proud of and say, look what I did. I also like games that relax me rather than challenge me. Even though I like both of those things, I just prefer the relaxing experiences. So Animal Crossing, all those things are like Animal Crossing's bread and butter. But for whatever reason, my favorite type of game, made by my favorite video game developer in Nintendo, I just was never able to get into it. Now, granted, I didn't give it much of a try. I played New Leaf for like an hour, and then I was out because I was like, what am I doing? I don't mind doing things over and over again, but give me a goal. Give me something to strive for. Let me know where I'm going. I just felt like I was kind of on this island wandering around, and there were these villagers, and I didn't know why I was supposed to care about them, and I also didn't know what my goal was, why I was just picking up seashells. Like, it really just seemed like a game where I picked up seashells and casted a fish, but there was no reason. It wasn't like Stardew Valley where you're trying to catch all the fish, or you're trying to complete the community center, or it wasn't even like a thing where most of these tasks had like mini games within them. It was just for funsies. And it seemed like the only goal was to collect trinkets. And at the time, and in retrospect, I don't think this was still true of the older games. But at the time, I thought that the trinket collecting was just like random stuff that didn't make sense to be in a house. Like, oh, you got a little Ferris wheel, miniature-sized Ferris. I don't know if that was even an item. But those were the types of things that I thought, I was like, that's dumb. I don't want to do this. But then when they revealed New Horizons, I slowly started to become intrigued for a few reasons. One was because I'm all in on the Switch, and the community is such a great aspect of that, and I knew this was going to be a big thing for the community. Part of it was because I wanted to like it. This was the type of game I was supposed to like from the studio that I did like. So I was like, I really wanted to like it. And a third part of it was I noticed that they were introducing elements like crafting, and I was like, I'm going to wait until closer to time when it comes out. I'm going to watch some reviews. I'm going to follow where this game goes, and maybe I'll give it a try. The last direct that they talked about it before it released, they also showed a lot of the things that you could collect, and they showed that when you start on this island, there were no houses. When you start on this island, there was nothing, and you have to build it from nothing into something. I was like, that's the missing ingredient I've been missing. And I know that I'm giving away a lot of what I'll probably talk about in the review, but I felt like this story is important, and I told you I'm kind of making some of this up as I go on. I feel like my introduction to my thoughts on a series and on a game in general is something that if I have something to say, I do want to start with at the beginning, so I'm glad that I said that. So thus far, I've loved my experience with New Horizons. What I've loved more is that my wife even got into it for a little bit, so we were able to bond over a game that wasn't just a quick versus multiplayer, and that's really, really cool for me because that has not been something I've been able to do with her for a lot of games. It's really just been this and Pokemon Go, and she eventually lost interest in both of them, but that's fine. It gave me what I was looking for. The community interest in it encapsulated me enough that's like I didn't want to, everybody's got fear of missing out these days. I didn't want to be left out. And then going back and looking at reviews of older games, I realized that while this definitely brought some stuff to the table that made it more my thing, the old games weren't as different from this game as I thought they were. At least it doesn't seem like it, but it also doesn't seem like the type of game that you want to go back and play. So that's kind of the introduction on my thoughts on Animal Crossing New Horizons. We'll get into the nitty-gritty now. Section 1, the gameplay. I want to end with the score. I don't want to start with the score. So the gameplay, you basically go around on a daily basis. You collect shells, you catch fish, you can use Nook Miles, and you can earn Nook Miles to go to Nook Mile Ticket Islands and collect resources. You can craft, you can interact with the villagers, you can give them gifts, you can shop. Eventually, you can terraform. Isabelle will rank your island. They're all things that are very trivial. And I know I said I like games with remedial tasks, and I still kind of feel that way. You can fish. My wife just texted me. I guess I didn't say that. I thought I did. But I know that I said that I like these games with these remedial tasks, and I do like these ones. But I wish there was a little bit more, not challenge per se, but mini games within the games besides the collecting. It is very relaxing. I like the way that you can just pop in. Well, here's a big thing people talk about. The fact that you can only have one island per Switch, per household, and everybody just has to live on that island. I'm going to lump that into gameplay. A lot of people hate this. I like it. I'll tell you why I like it. I understand it's not for everyone, and I completely agree that having the option would be better than not having it. But by putting everybody in the same household on the same island, it really does make it a communal experience where me and my wife were building this house together. But then it got pointed out to me, well, what if you're doing it with a sibling? I'm like, that's a completely different story. That would be awful. I would be so peeved if my sister and I were playing a game and she missed with something that I had done. It doesn't have the same level of cooperation that I have as an adult with my wife. But I like that aspect of it. I do agree that even if there isn't going to be an option, the player two, the second person to join, kind of has a secondhand experience, and there's a lot of things they miss out on or things they can't access, and that's not cool. Because it makes it like you buy this game for your household, but not everybody can play it. Not everybody can get a full experience, and that's kind of lame. But overall, I really do enjoy the gameplay. I find it relaxing. I like that it's not something that I necessarily have to play for hours on end. It's something that I can just play a bit each day. But if I wanted to play it a lot, they've really ramped this one up to where that's a possibility. But I don't like that that the second player gets a second-rate experience. While I don't care and I wouldn't use it this way, I agree that they should give you the option to have a second island on the same console. And I do wish that the games were more enticing, I guess. I wish there were mini games within the tasks. Like I wish the fishing game had a little bit more to it. So overall, I think I'm going to give this one a 4. I like it. I like the gameplay. So after that would be the story. Now, story is going to be a tough one to rank. Because not for this game, just in general. Because you have some games like Skyrim with a million different paths you can branch down on a million different side stories. And you have some games like Mario where the story is literally just Bowser kidnapped the princess. And then you also have some games with brilliant cinematic tales unfolding before you that make you feel emotions. And those are clearly the best ones. Because, I mean, if you want a story, why not have the best one? However, I feel like expecting some games to have that type of story is trying to make that game something that it's not, and trying to make it focus on something that it's not trying to focus on. I'm not a huge chess person, but chess has been one of the most popular board games for centuries. And I don't think anyone would ever expect chess to have a story. So I'm going to do my best on this show to try to rank games, the story of games, according to what they are trying to accomplish and how well they accomplish that, and if I think it makes for an enjoyable experience, rather than ranking it the same way I would a story for a movie or a TV show where that's the primary goal. Animal Crossing New Horizons is not a story-heavy game. Animal Crossing New Horizons focuses very much on you arriving on this island. Once you get on the island, you are indebted to Tom Nook, as you do, and you're just trying to build a bustling community. My understanding is in some of the older games, and maybe this one, if I played it enough, there are hidden chunks of lore you can find between the characters. I like stuff like that. I've not experienced stuff like that myself in New Horizons, but I've also not played it a lot. I feel like that's something they reward you with in Animal Crossing games in the past, from what I've been told at least, for playing for months on end and really, really getting to know the characters. That being said, characters play a role in story, and while I wouldn't call any of the Animal Crossing villagers deep, I do think they have a pretty good selection of a variety of different personalities and designs, and I thought it was just such a weird thing when I started the game, but the more I played it, I really started taking pride in like who my villagers were, and I used to look for like, oh, there's Dom, I got to talk to Dom. Or my favorite was Gaston, because if you don't know, Gaston is a bunny rabbit with a big old stash and a deep, deep voice. And I ran into him in the middle of the Easter event, and I was like, dude, this guy's like the anti-zipper. I have to invite the anti-zipper to join my island. So I did. And then I learned not only is he like a bunny rabbit, but like really, really deep and like serious, unlike Zipper. He he also hated the hiding of the Easter egg. So I literally had the anti-zipper on our island, and he hands down became my favorite villager out of the batch that we had accrued as a family, because he was just like an old man that wasn't here to like be silly or mess around, just enjoying his life on the island. I also had the memory of him being the anti-zipper, so he was my favorite. Point is, for as simplistic and dumb as the villagers are, they are incredibly endearing. And the concept of the game, while simplistic, gives you something to work towards. It's always had the debt to work towards, but now it also has the community building to work towards. For that reason and what they're trying to accomplish, I feel like there's going to be a recurring theme on the show, but I guess that's what I get for doing a simplistic rating system. I think I'm going to give this one, I'm tempted to give it a 5, but what more would I want from it? I guess that's what I have to ask. In what they're trying to accomplish, what could they do that they didn't do that I would like for them to do? The only thing I can think of is I wish that rather than having more villagers, because I think there are like 400 you can get, I would settle for like 200 villagers to choose from, because I'm never going to see all 400 anyway. I would settle for 200 villagers with more dialogue options, because after a while you do hear a lot of the same things over and over again, and it kind of takes me out of the world I'm trying to suck myself into. Because I'm like, yeah, you said that yesterday. That's probably my only complaint. But even with that, since that's not the bulk of the game, it's just kind of like something that, as a side benefit, you fall in love with. Like, oh, all these cool villagers, I'm building this community. Like, I have created this neighborhood. I think I will go 5. I think I do love it. We could get more out of them, but I honestly don't find the more that I could get out of them as something that really detracted from my experience in any noticeable way. So that would be that. So we are halfway through the review now, which means that it is time to take a break and do what we're calling wife questions. At least that's what we're calling it this week, because I have not come up with names for these segments yet. So here's a wife questions. So if you don't know, every week my wife is going to ask me a question. And as a break in the middle of the podcast, I'm just going to answer that question. For this first week, apparently, she decided to remain topical with the source material of the podcast. And if in the future she does not, I think that's great too. I think it keeps us on our toes. But she asked this week, I'll read her exact words, what are your thoughts on the upcoming Wonder Woman movie? So right before I recorded the segment, I had to go and I had to watch the trailer, because I know it's Wonder Woman 1984. I have seen the first one, and I knew it was coming out this summer, but I had not seen the trailer. So let me start with my thoughts on it before I watch the trailer, and then I'll give my thoughts on the actual trailer. I loved the first movie. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, because somewhere a long ways down the line, maybe I'll review it. It's been a while since I've seen it, and I don't remember a lot, but I just remember it being the first DC movie since they started the DC Extended Universe that I really, really thought just knocked it out of the park. Didn't care about Man of Steel, did not care about Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. This was the first movie that they did a really good job. And Justice League after that was okay. Suicide Squad was, I think, better than people gave it credit for, but kind of all over the place, inconsistent narrative because they did a lot of stuff in post. But I love the movie. And of course Joker. Gosh, I'm kind of getting off topic, but sidebar: the DCEU has completely gone off the rails. Trying to do these multiverse things doesn't work if you don't establish that first. They have failed to really get a cinematic universe going the way that Marvel did. However, between Wonder Woman and Joker, and I'm sure this second Wonder Woman movie, and I feel like there was another one, it does feel like they're really starting to at least make good movies again. And while it would be cool to see a DC Extended Universe, the quality of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I am happy with the movies they're releasing now, and I hope that the ones coming out, I hope the Robert Pattinson Batman movie is just great. I really do. So in that regards, I'm excited for Wonder Woman 1984 because I like the first one. Why won't I like the second one? Now, about the trailer. I really only have, I think, two thoughts. The first thought is that I don't know why her boyfriend, played by Chris Pine, I think his name is Steve, because why not have a Chris play a Steve? It's worked out for Marvel. But I don't know how he's back, because I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be like 60, 70 years later. The first one's in World War I believe. I'm sure I'm going to show my ignorance here, but I know this is right before the 1920s, I believe. It's like the 1910s. I'm going to look this up so I can see how dumb I am or how smart I am. We'll find out together. World War I. 1914 to 1918. So I'm smart today. Good for me. But that was in like the 19-teens, and this is, I think, supposed to be in the 1980s. Makes perfect sense that Princess Diana would be there because she's like immortal, I believe. Don't know why he's there. Don't know how. I'm sure they'll explain that in the movie. Second thought. I have no idea what story they're trying to tell me based off of this movie. Just kind of seemed like a bunch of Hollywood mumbo jumbo. So I hope there is more story to tell there than the trailer would indicate. But I'm sure no matter what, it'll be a fun time. I'm getting a little burnt out on superhero movies, but they're still always a fun time at the very least, especially the first time you watch them, especially if you see them in theaters. So those are my thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984. And now back to the review. So I'm sure we're going to breeze through these last two a lot quicker than we did the first two, which that in of itself is already a good reason to change up the order next week. But here we are now. The next category is going to be replay value. The replay value of Animal Crossing New Horizons. So I already think this is going to be a score that hurts Animal Crossing New Horizons, because I can tell you right now, for me personally, the second that I finished kind of terraforming the island the way I wanted it, and even before I had finished some of the decoration that I wanted to do, I was kind of mentally tuned out. And I'm sure I'm going to go back and I'm going to get some of those last decorations done, because there's a few things I really want to do just to say that I did it, so I can feel like I reached a point of completion in the game. That and pay off my house for the same reason. Theoretically, I guess I should decorate my house, but there's only so many decorations per day. I'm not going to time travel, and I don't want to just fill my room with a bunch of random stuff for the sake of it, but I also don't want to play for months and months and months just to I don't know. That's not important. The point is that once I got the island more or less the way that I wanted it, I was kind of done. That was after about 60 hours, so that's by no means a big knock on the game. I think that 60 hours is pretty good timing for me. It's above average, we'll say, compared to some of the other games, but not quite the tip top. But I don't think I have any incentive to go back and do it again. It doesn't seem like it would be an easy game to just wipe and restart, though I do know that's an option. I don't know how. I know it's difficult. or at least, well, tedious, I guess I should say. If you know what you're doing, I'm sure it's easy, but it's tedious. They don't make it overtly obvious because they don't want you to do that. They want you to let this be your island forever, and if you leave for a long time and you come back and your island's full of weeds, that's on you. At least your villagers don't run away now, is my understanding. They used to do that. I'm all over the place. I don't think there's any reason to restart the game because, like I said, I don't think the game was designed to do that. And if it did, it would start at a random point in time, different than when the game starts, like in regular life. And from what I've seen from a lot of people online, and to an extent what I'm experiencing, is that this game is also very community driven. And I feel like starting a whole new island after everybody has basically built a metropolis would take away a lot of the appeal of the game. So I don't think there's any reason to go back and play it. By the same token, you could argue that it has good replay value because for some people, they're never going to stop playing it. Like, they don't need to restart it. There's no replay. There's just continuing to play. I've heard it said that this game kind of inspired, maybe not intentionally inspired, but was like the ancestor, as it were, to the modern mobile game, the games that never end where you unlock things over time, just without gacha mechanics. And I definitely see that. In that regards, I suppose it does have a lot of replay value, just not for me. Because once I get the island the way I want it, I don't really have any incentive to continue refining it or tweaking it. Even if I went crazy and like made something that I thought was as beautiful as I can make it. I'm not that creative, but if I did, I feel like once I was finished, I'd still be finished. And I know there's some people who play forever. I just don't think that I would do that. So I think all of this is setting up for a 3, which is somewhat biased because it's based off the way that I play the game, but by the same token, a review, in my opinion, should be biased in some regard. The unbiased part comes when you say, this is how I feel about it for these reasons. Someone might feel differently for these reasons. But I feel like these are my reviews. So if I personally see that there's replay value in the fact that the game can never end, but don't see replay value in the sense that I'm eventually going to come to a stopping point and I don't see any reason to restart, I think that evens out to a 3. I think that's neutral for the replay value. Which brings us to our last category, which is graphics, which I've already told you is the lowest rated category. I think that graphics really don't matter at all as long as the game is playable. However, Arlo from YouTube talks a lot about how he thinks that graphics don't matter, but they're nice. You know, it's nice to look at something pretty. And that's something that as I've gotten older, I've definitely come to empathize or sympathize with more. I think that it's nice to look at something that's nice. And I also think that as I've gotten older, I don't necessarily care about like the best frame rate or the best definition or resolution, I suppose. I do appreciate the art and design that goes into creating a video game because that's a huge part of it, and that's a big expression of what these people are doing. So I'm not going to grade graphics based off of how many frames per second you see, and I wouldn't even honestly be able to tell you. I know that if there are frame rate issues that images can lag, but unless it's just like incredibly awful, I'm not the type of person who's going to notice, especially because I don't play a lot of competitive games. What I am going to base it off of is how pretty the game is to look at, the art style they were going for, how well they accomplished it, and if I just think it is a pretty piece of art, as it were. There's lots of different types of paintings, for example. They're not all the same. They're not all the most realistic, but that doesn't mean they can't be a classic. There's different genres. Animal Crossing has a very cartoony vibe to it. I think that they really knocked it out of the park with this one. I think that the textures and the colors are bright and vibrant. I think that they are clear and crisp. I think it looks exactly like Animal Crossing without looking ugly. Because I recognize that Animal Crossing has its own charm and that it's always had like an art style that, makes it different and makes it its own thing. Like it very much is its own thing. But by the same token, I've always thought that own thing was ugly. And I feel like with this game, they've found a way to keep the essence of what Animal Crossing is, but just make it incredibly pretty. And I really don't know if these graphic discussions or reviews are really going to be anything much more than, I think this is pretty or I think this is ugly, because I'm not an artist. I've written music before, but I don't even do that anymore. But I've never been that kind of artist. But I'm going to try, and maybe I'll get better at it over time. But overall, I think this is another 5. Like, even with the 5 for story, I thought of ways that I thought that I could make it better, but I literally cannot think of a single way they could have made this graphic design choice better. The only thing that I could think of that might fall into that, which isn't even technically graphics, is perhaps make the camera a little bit easier to control. But it was never a problem for me. I was always able to get around just fine. So now I'm going to calculate the score. I really didn't want to cut off in the middle of it, but I also did not want to calculate it on the air. But I think that's what we're going to have to do, because I'd rather do that than just cut it off, and I'm stuttering like a crazy person. I'd rather do that than just cut it off and come back. And at least the first time, it'll work. Maybe we'll figure out something better for the next time. Maybe I'll do more planning and I'll actually have a score ahead of time. Maybe that's the answer. But we will do this live for the first time. So let's see here. Gosh. Gosh. I think I am going to come back, because right now my ADHD mind is freezing up. And I got to do some math on this, so we're going to pause the recording and come back with the score. Okay, we're back after I revisited my high school math class and learned how to calculate a score that is way too convoluted, but was the only way I felt I was giving an accurate score I could feel confident in, and does my audience or lack thereof justice. So the overall score of Animal Crossing New Horizons is going to be 4.15 out of 5 stars. You heard it here first. That is the definitive and only score. Just kidding. That's just my score. So that is the end of the first review. We are going to wrap things up with our Who Would Win? Or something less generic after I come up with names next week. Okay. So because I didn't ask for permission to use their real names, and because I think it would be fun to make up nicknames on the fly, I'm just going to let you know that the 2 submissions for this week's Who Would Win came from 2 of my real-life friends, and one of them is going to be Shazam, as submitted by the Bearded One, and Luke Skywalker in his prime, as submitted by the Nerded One. Yeah, let's go with that. I think they'll both appreciate those, if they listen. Like I said, I could be shouting to the void. I don't care. I'm having a fantastic time. I'm glad that all of you or none of you joined me. So, first thing we have to determine is, what does Luke Skywalker in his prime mean? Because common sense would typically... Is my wife doing that, or did I? Sorry. I think that was me. YouTube just randomly started on my television, and I'm not sure why. That's fine. What was I thinking? No, I think that's her, because she just started again. She thinks she's being funny. I just turned it off, the TV, entirely. So, where was I? Gosh, my train of thought. Okay, so Luke Skywalker in his prime. We have to determine what that means, because common sense would dictate that your prime is when you are in your young adulthood, when you have your most bodily strength, etc. However, it could be argued that Luke Skywalker's prime was when he was a hermit, because that was when he was most powerful with the Force. So I thought to determine this, rather than ask Caleb what he meant when I had that initial thought, let's just look up the definition of Prime. Crap. I'm going to have to go back in and I'm going to ask him if he wants his name censored. And if he does, I will find out a way to do it, even if I'm editing on my phone. So let's look up Prime. And we'll look up the definition so we don't get Amazon. Prime definition. Oh, my wife is coming out. Hello, wife.
Was there penguins out here?
No, I turned it off because YouTube kept popping up.
That's supposed to be penguins.
Well, it's not penguins. It's just a blank screen so I could finish up.
But it wasn't penguins?
No. I feel like this may be a better way to stop the episode, but I also don't want to let the people who submitted heroes down, so now I can't decide if I should end this way.
So are the penguins?
No, there's no penguins. Sorry. Thanks for making my first show memorable, though. I love you. She was trying to put penguins on the screen, and I kind of ruined it for her. Okay. So, as an adjective, it says, of first importance, main. Of the best possible quality, excellent. As a noun, it says, a state or time of greatest strength, vigor, or success in a person's life. I'm going to say that Luke Skywalker as a hermit is Luke Skywalker in his prime, because all of those except success that's when he had the most of that. So we're talking old hermit Luke Skywalker versus Shazam. Now, this is a tough one because I'm not extremely well versed in either of these. But my understanding is that Shazam is basically, I know the lore, I've seen the movie. He's a little kid who can turn into a big dude. The big dude's basically Superman. But he's like a little kid in Superman's body, and he can go back and forth between the two because he's got the magical power of the Shazam wizards. And I'm sure I slaughtered that, and some comic dude is going to tear me a new one on Twitter. But that's the general principle. Luke Skywalker, on the other hand, is not basically Superman, but he can do a lot of things with the Force that might counteract Superman. You can do a Force mind trick. I say Superman, it'd be Shazam. I think that I just this is tough. I think I'm going to go with Shazam because my basic understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm really wrong, but let's look this up too, actually. My understanding of Shazam is that he's invincible in terms of like things hitting him or hurting him. He's very much like Superman in that regard. Okay, so let's see here. New 52 Shazam, despite knowing considerably less about him, is arguably less powerful than his post-crisis counterpart. We know that he can be harmed by someone whose powers are greater or equal to his. I read that in reverse order. So no, he is not invulnerable. How tough is Captain Marvel, parentheses, Shazam in DC? So apparently he's not invulnerable, but I don't know how powerful he is. How powerful is Mr. Billy Batson? I'm still going to say Shazam wins because Force, I believe that he shoots lightning. I'm very bad at this. That's part of the fun of this segment, though. I'm not always going to know everything about all the people. I just think that any sort of power that Luke Skywalker could have, besides potentially Force mind control, Shazam could also have. And anything that he could attack him with, I feel like Shazam could very easily resist. And I feel like he could move too quickly for a Force mind control to be in place long enough for him to be defeated. So that's it. That's the end of the first episode of Pod Freak. We're going to wrap up here because I've got some ringing in my ear. Also, that's the end of all the content. I hope you will check us out. I hope you'll continue following us. We are on basically everywhere podcasts can be found. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Podomatic, YouTube. We're technically on Google Play, which is technically different than Google Podcasts, but my understanding is that service will wrap up before the end of the year. But we're on all of them. Go find us. Follow me at PodFreak. and it'll be a good time. I had a lot of fun doing this, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes. Next week, I believe, is going to be a movie week. I have not decided for sure what we're reviewing yet, but I am pretty sure, no, for my wife's sake, because this is what she asked me to do, and I know it means a lot to her to be included. Next week is going to be our first movie review, and it's going to be The Princess Bride. I've got to come up with a system for how I'm going to review it, but I will already let you know that, spoiler, if my official rating is not 5 stars, my wife is going to be very upset with me and has told me that's the only option. So I guess technically spoiler, it's going to be 5 stars, quote unquote. But thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.